Caribbean uprisings, disturbances, call them what you will, started again. These were not people who were intimidated. These were not people who were unsure about what they wanted. They knew that if they wanted freedom, if they wanted better wages, if they wanted better living conditions, they would have to do something about it. And so when, in 1935, it turned out that the estate manager said to them, well, there'll be no increase in wages, they then downed their tools and started marching from one end of the island to the next. And the beautiful thing about it is that there was a sense of unity. There was a sense of solidarity. I want you to judge as young people whether we as a people have that sense of oneness and unity and solidarity, or is it that we have allowed too many things to divide us? I'm saying that there's a direct link between what happened in 1834, 1835 to what happened in 1935. Because you see, when they had the understanding, even though they were talking about emancipation, they felt it in their bones that it was not for real. And this is when they rioted, this is when they rebelled and said, well, we want better. And we are prepared to pay the sacrifice in order that we might have things better, not only for ourselves, but most importantly, for their children. And this is one of the remarkable things about African people. They have a strong sense of family. And so you found that there were mothers, and in some cases there were also fathers, who had such a strong sense of family that they were prepared to make any sacrifice that you can think about in order to be sure that things will be better for their children. Do you think we still have that?
No, not as much.
Not as much. That's an honest answer, not as much. And part of history is to understand it and to know it and to say, well, the things which we have lost, because they're so important to us, we have to work together to revive them, to bring them back, because we're the ones suffering. Because those values and those virtues which were common among our ancestors are no longer common among us. When I was growing up as a boy in Challengers, it really did not matter to adults whose child I was. If I was doing something which was considered naughty, to use a nice word, I would be chastised there and then. And in addition, whoever that adult was who had chastised me and told me not to do this and not to do that, they would go and speak to my mother. And one of the remarkable things about this whole situation was that sometimes the mothers, the parents were not even on talking terms, as we say. But nevertheless, such was their determination to make sure that that little boy or that little girl did not do anything wrong, that he remained on the straight and narrow, that they made sure they go on to say, well, I see your daughter, I see your son, and I want you to talk to him, I want you to talk to her. The adults were there doing all that they possibly could in order to save the generation. We had a sense of pride. We had a sense of belonging. We had a sense of the continuity of the family. They recognized that, listen, the country is going to be as strong or as good as the individual boys and girls who grow up to be good and devoted citizens to the country. Do we do that anymore?
Not as much.
So history is saying to us, we need to understand how those things worked for us and benefited us And we have to dedicate ourselves to bringing back, to reviving and renewing so many of those wonderful things which, in spite of there being poverty, in spite of there being disease, in spite of there being oppression, I want to say to you that, the spirit of our people was never, never, never broken. Never broken. In spite of all that they did, they could not eradicate from our people that sense of their own destiny, their own worth, their own self-pride. And I think that this is what we need to cultivate in each and every one of us. We need then to be moving forward. But I want to suggest to you that we can't move forward unless we have a knowledge of the past, an understanding of the past, a positive attitude towards the past, and above all, we need to become reconciled to the past. We cannot be heard to say, well, it doesn't matter. It happened a long time ago and therefore it doesn't affect us. Because you see, there are times I reflect on the history of Nevis compared to the history of St. Kitts. And what happens is that if you ask yourself the question, why is it there are so many family names in Nevis up to this day, which are fairly commonplace? And you can almost say, if somebody has a surname Liebert, all right, Morton, anyone name Morton? All right? I mean, there's scores of family names which you can identify with Nevis. You name them. Smithon, Liebert, Joseph. All right, we'll take that. All right, right. But what I'm saying is that the history of the two islands turned out to be different. So that whereas they had emancipation around the same time, conditions in St. Kitts under the plantation system was so extremely bad that you had Kittitians just wanting to go anywhere in the world that they could possibly escape to. And so one of the haunting statistics of the history, the modern history of St. Kitts, tells us that between the years roughly 1900 and 1930, the population of St. Kitts fell by 43%. People were just going away. Wherever they could get to go, they were going. So extremely bad were the conditions in St. Kitts. Do you understand what I'm saying? And it is not therefore surprising because a similar thing was not happening in Nevis. And therefore, the Nevisian family remained somewhat stronger, more coherent, more cohesive. And today, the Nevis society is rather different from the St. Kitts society. Because you see, as people went away, the vacuum had to be filled. And you found people coming in from Nevis, Anguilla, Antigua, and Dominica. Not to go any further because that was then the Leeward Islands colony. They came in and they filled the vacuum. And the point I'm making is that because of that emigration and because of this immigration to fill the vacuum, you're going to find that the stock, the citizen stock, if you will, of St. Kitts has been somewhat watered down, diminished. And what is the result? It means that Kittitians have tended to be not as patriotic, because a country losing almost 50% of its population, means that a lot of the people, the teachers, the farmers, the workers, whatever, they've all gone. And the country has lost a lot of its memory. Nevis has not been, affected in the same way. You ask yourself, why? I'm trying to explain that history affects us still. Because you see, whereas St. Kitts, because it was an extremely fertile island, because sugar and the plantation system were doing extremely well, the planters who owned all of these estates were determined just to dig their heel in and not to give way to any kind of peasantry. Because you see, in 1896, 1897, you had the Norman Commission coming to St. Kitts and making the recommendation that the plantation system should be modified in order to ensure that plantation workers were able to get some land of their own so that they could establish a peasantry. But that did not happen. It happened in Nevis, and so you're going to find that today the land tenure system in Nevis is very different from the land tenure system in St. Kitts. And if you want to help people to grow their pride, their confidence, their sense of self, let them have some land. Let them have title to land. Let them live on a piece of land knowing that nobody could chase them off of it. You go to Anguilla and you meet a man or a woman. They need not be dressed in any fancy anything, but they have such a rich sense, such a strong sense of self, because regardless of how they look or what you might think about them, they may have a few acres of land in some part of Anguilla. And that is what gives them pride and strength and a sense of their own individual personhood. So I'm saying that we need to become reconciled to our history and to recognize that there are some good points, there are some outstanding points, there are some heroes and heroines who we need to get to know, to get acquainted with. We're not talking about heroes and heroines just in the book after they're dead. We're talking about individuals who today are living heroic lives. They're making sacrifices. They're doing all the right things for the benefit of their families, for the benefit of their community. They are looking out for their brother. They are, in fact, their brothers and sisters' keeper. We need to become more acquainted with who we are, with our rich heritage. The theme speaks about confidence. Do you recognize how we have become paralyzed in many instances because we lack confidence? Just think about it for a minute. If you do not have confidence, then you won't even try. And so, as I said before, the words of the theme are extremely important. Because we lack confidence in many, many instances, we become very touchy, very, irritable. But if you are confident, things fall on your back and they fall off. You're able to move ahead. Even though you encounter some difficulty, you can move on. I'm going to give you two examples. One not belonging to us, the other belonging to us. Way back in 1954, and Mr. Lazar will bear me out. Not that he was alive then. There was a man named Roger Bannister. And Roger Bannister, like the other people of his time, believed it was humanly impossible for anybody to run a mile under 4 minutes. But on a famous day in 1954, Bannister, who felt that he must be able to do it. It is not beyond human capacity. And he did it. He ran a mile, 3.59 seconds or something like that, minutes, sorry. And the remarkable thing about it is that within weeks of him running that mile in under 4 minutes, you had people all over the world doing the same thing. Because they now believe that it could be done, and therefore they were able to do it. I want you to recognize Kim Collins has been much in the news recently, and kudos to him and to the other young athletes whom he is evidently helping and motivating. But just think of Kim Collins, young man from St. Kitts. Now, if he didn't have the world of confidence in himself, could he even make it beyond St. Kitts? Much more to become a world champion? What we are saying is that we need to reconcile ourselves to our history. If we are going to move forward, we need to be able to develop a positive attitude towards our history. And only when we have done those things would we grow and develop the confidence which we need to have. Confidence is mightily important. If you keep on telling yourself, well, I'm a victim, poor me. If you don't have that confidence, if you don't break out of that mode and be positive, Yes, I can. Yes, I have the ability. Yes, I'm prepared to overcome the obstacles. One famous character in the United States used the phrase, winners never quit. Quitters never win. Winners never quit. You got to be prepared to keep on and on. You fall down, but you get up again because your confidence says to you, yes, I can do it. And then you recognize that quitters never win. If you tell yourself it's too hard, if you tell yourself I can't possibly do it, then you're going nowhere. It's not surprising then that Carl